Say, what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a pro violation. Yard down. Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. During those times, I accumulated some good stories. I'm going to share one with y'all today. If you like the video, hit the like button, man. Come on. If you dislike the video, hit the dislike button. Also, be sure to leave a comment. And most importantly, hit that notification bell. That way, anytime I drop a story, you will be notified ASAP, and you can hop on it whenever you're ready. Also, man, like I told y'all, I got some great older stories. Go to my YouTube playlist, scroll down through my stuff. I have it arranged in different categories, and you will definitely find something that you like. Now, let's hop right up into this video. Now, when I was locked up in prison, right, I ran across some legendary dudes, some legendary Crips, man, and legendary dudes in general. Now, when I say legendary, I'm not using it in the sense that you may hear other people use it. I'm just using it in the term of these dudes was well known, well loved, sometimes even well feared for their accomplishments on the streets and also in prison, being rioters, being soldiers, stuff like that, right? So now, when I got arrested, it was in 1994. I hit the pen in 1996. But keep in mind, this is well before social media, right? And so I'm from a city known as Bannon, California. It's maybe about 30 miles east of Palm Springs. About 30 miles west of Palm Springs, about an hour and a half east of LA, right? And so the reason that I mention that is to say that Compton, Los Angeles, Watts, back in those days, as far as I was concerned, that was very far away. And so it was very unlikely that I would hear information about a lot of these dudes who was in the streets, who was well known in the streets and stuff, because due to the distance between where I lived and where some of these Compton Crips, LA Crips and stuff was, right? And then also in 1989, I had pretty much moved to the city of Billings, Montana, and was hustling and selling dope out there, so on and so forth, right? So later on, once I run across some of these dudes in prison, I really had no idea of how well their reputation had spread, you know, in some of these gang cultures in the gang world, period, you know, really until I moved on, and I would hear other people tell stories about them in prison and stuff. Other people speak highly of them, and especially once I got home and started seeing the way some of these dudes was mentioned in some of these YouTube videos, right? So that's what I want to talk about today. A dude who was my Celly, man, a legendary Crip known as Big H, aka Adrian Collins. Now, I've mentioned him in several of my stories before, and sometimes people will confuse him with the Big Heron, who was known for being associated with Suge Knight and Death Row Records. No, the dude that I'm talking about was a Crip, and by the time I met him in 1996, he had already been locked up 15, 16 years, you know, somewhere around there. So he left the streets in the 80s, well before Death Row rose to you know, be a well-known record group or whatever, right? And so the way I meet Big H is like I told you guys, I got arrested in 94. In 1996, I got sent to Salinas Valley State Prison. Now, Salinas Valley State Prison has a well-known reputation for being a violent, dangerous prison. At that time, when I got there, it had been built recently, and the first cell that they sent me to actually still had a lot of dust, you know, and particles on the floor, washers and stuff. So I was the first person to enter that cell. At that time, I was in another building. And so I'm going to chow one day. I happened to see this dude who was working in the kitchen, by a pimp by the name of Spicy. We was in Montana. Now, around the time, Spicy was probably in his early 40s, you know, dark-skinned dude, 5'6", 5'7", probably about 140 pounds, if that, you know. So in the kitchen, they was clowning him and ridiculing him when he was claiming he was a pimp. Because when I met him, it looked like he was on drugs. I didn't know him to have any girls or anything like that, you know. And so When I'm walking by, he said, "Hey man, I know that dude right there. Chill. What's up, man? You remember me? What's up, man? It's me, Spicy, man, Spicy." So I get my tray. I holler at him for a minute. I go ahead and sit down and eat. So when the next time I come back, it was another brother in the kitchen known as Kenny Rat from Four Deuce. So he asked me, "What's up, homie? Where you from?" I told him. He said, "Okay, don't trip, man. Next time you slide back through, I'm going to have something for you." So when I came back the next time, he gave me a knife. That was the first knife that I ever had in prison. And he as well didn't know me from anybody else. It was just back in those days, first and foremost, dudes had love for other black individuals, right? And then the fact that I also told him that I was a Crip, he blessed me with that thing, just knowing the seriousness of being on a level 4, right? And so that was the first knife that I ever had. So before I did this story, I was trying to think how I actually met Big H, right? They would call him Big Heron, but a lot of times they would refer to him as Big H, right? And so I believe it was one day I was on the wall where the Crips used to kick it in Salinas. And so we just got to talking or whatever. And it may have been because I looked extremely young. At that time, I believe Big H was probably about 44, 45, somewhere around there, maybe 42, somewhere in his early to mid 40s. I remember that, right? And even though I was 25, I probably looked like I was 21 or 22, 5'9", probably about 145, 150, real skinny dude, and I wasn't necessarily, he may have didn't necessarily see me hanging with any collective every single day, right? Because sometimes in prison, you can find out where a person is from just by the dudes that he's hanging with. But at that point in time, there was no dudes from IE on the yard. And actually at that point in time, I didn't function with IE because in my city, we wasn't functioning as IE. So I was introduced to IE later on. So anyway, at that time, I was just really doing the Crip thing. I'm hanging with the Crips or whatever, right? So when he asked me, when he inquired about where I was from, I told him, right? So we go to talking, and I told him I happened to be in a cell with a dude from Venice Showline at the time, and he was an extremely loud snorer, and he was like, "Hey, well, my Celly just went home, man, and if you want to, you can move down there with me," right? So he seemed like a cool dude, so I said, okay. So we put the move in, and eventually I was moved down there with him, right? So like I said, at this point in time, I'm just meeting him, so I'm not knowing who this dude is. I'm not knowing that he is a well-loved, well-respected individual. And like I said earlier, he had already been in prison about 15, 16 years, right? But you can be the most downest, ridingest dude on the streets. But when you come to prison, it's a whole nother thing. You have to pretty much make your reputation all over again, And like I said, I come to find out this dude was extremely well respected. But even as we were Cellies, even though I was seeing little things, I really didn't know how much this dude was loved and respected and sometimes feared until I moved on, went to other prisons, and I would hear his name mentioned, not only by Compton Crips and Watts Crips, but a lot of Crips. They had a lot of love for Big H and always spoke of him highly, and even a lot of Bloods as well, And so I remember one day we was on the yard and somebody came up to him and they started talking Swahili, right? And that was the first time I'd ever heard Swahili spoke. So when we got back to the cell, I asked him about, what was that language? And he told me it was Swahili. And he said, wow, he knew a little bit of it. It had been a while since he had spoke it, and a lot of it had got away from him. But he did share a few words with me that he knew, right? And so now, the more time, we're Cellies and stuff, I'm starting to, like I see, once again, see how this dude is well-loved, well-respected. In my opinion, he ran the Crips on that yard unofficially, not because he wanted to or even he didn't even try to, just due to the fact of his reputation among those who knew of him and the respect they had for him, And I say that because a lot of dudes would always talk to him, ask him his advice on certain situations that was going on, and a lot of kites would always be sent to him, a lot of kites. And he would open the kites and read them right in front of me, And a lot of times they would be from other Crips asking his opinion on this situation that was going on that situation that was going on. So, this dude was well respected, man. One thing that I definitely remember about Big H, man, was his generosity. He was extremely generous. At that time, I believe we could spend $140 when we go to the store. Now, Big H fortunately had people who loved him, who looked out for him, and I don't never remember him not going to the store. But unfortunately, it's not like that for everybody. You know, you have a lot of people in prison sometimes whose family, for whatever reason, is unable to send them money. And, you know, being locked up in prison, keep in mind, we're fed probably about maybe 6:30 in the morning. Then we're given a little sack lunch and then a small little dinner. So if you're a big old giant dude or just a grown man, period, you're not going to be able to survive on prison food alone. You know, you're going to have some extras here and there. And H, like I said, was fortunate enough to always go to the store every month, and he'd spend the max every month. I remember, though, when he would go to the store, he'd come back to the yard and people would say, hey, Big H, man, you know, can I get a soup or two or something? He would dig in his bag. Even though they asked for a soup, he would always give them 8 to 10 soups, you know, all the time. You know, sometimes he might just throw in a bag of chips or a bag of cookies. He was extremely generous, and I kid you not. Every time he got back to the cell, every single time he went to the store, by the time he got back to the cell, he would be passed out. He would be done passed out, man, sometimes $50, $60 worth of stuff. This is the type of dude this guy was. And he was generous. He had, you know, he smoked cigarettes and he drank coffee. So he would also pass that out too. Sometimes when he would get back to the building, he already knew certain dudes didn't go to the store. He would just go to their cell and just slide them some soups, slide them some coffee, you know. And so one day I asked him, I said, Big H, man, why you always do that, man? You be giving away a whole lot of your stuff. He said, oh, man, chill. That's the way he used to talk. He said, oh, man, chill. I just can't help it, man. You know, I just can't tell nobody no. Plus, I know what it's like to be up in here, you know, to be locked down and stuff. So the dude was extremely generous, man. He was what I would call a naturally good dude, right? He was also with the business, though, like I say, because he was well loved, you know, and dude spoke highly of him. Now, when I met him, he was probably about 5'7", maybe 5'8", 5'7", probably about 155 pounds, maybe 150. He was more slender and cut up. But he had a photo album he would show me where back in the days, he was extremely big. He was a real big dude, you know. I remember him telling me a story one time. He was in Centinela. It's a level 4 prison down in the desert. And for whatever reason, he had went to the hole. Now, these were during times where everybody, all the races was still going to the same big giant yard on the hole. So if he would go to the yard with a Southern Mexican or a white, it was automatically on. You know, they was automatically squabbing. And, you know, back at those times, like I said, I was extremely new to prison. And I had no idea about all these racial politics. And to this day, I wish I had to sit down with him and asked him more, because he would tell me stuff, give me information. But like I say, now knowing everything I know and knowing that who he was, I wish I had got way more information just about his prison experience and everything, right? But he told me this one particular time he was in the hole, and for whatever reason, it was a white dude who was in the hole, and the white dude had a problem with him. So the white dude wrote him and sent him a kite, saying, hey, man, listen, I want to go to the yard so we can squabble up. You know what I'm saying? You know, of course, Big H, being the writer that he was, he wrote him back, told him no problem, set it up. You know what I'm saying? So sometime after that, they called him for yard, and he had already told his celly, hey, man, yeah, you know, the white boy, he want to see me, man. So when we go out here to the yard, I'm going to rush him. We going to get into it. You handle his celly, you know. And so, like I said, back in those times, they was going to the yard. It was on site. So I believe the white dude may have had some juice or whatever, but they put that, you know, they put that in motion. So H said one day when they come to his cell, ask him if he wants, you know, if him and his celly wants to go to yard. Now, of course, he's in the hole, so in order to go to yard, he's got to turn around, stick his hands through the food slot, get handcuffed. They bring him out, then they bring his celly out, you know, so on and so forth. So eventually, they get to the yard. They get to the yard first, then he already knew that the white dude was coming to the yard. Maybe he had seen him go to his cell or whatever. So the white dude and his celly eventually comes out there. Now, I believe he's told me the white dude was kind of a big dude, maybe about 5'11", about 200 pounds, somewhere around there. Now, during the telling of his story, this is when H still had some of his size, so he was bigger out. He was bigger as well. So he said when they get to the yard, you know, they step back, they put they back up against the gate or whatever. when the white dudes come out there, they get handcuffed. When the guard walk away, he said they immediately rush him. The dude who had a problem with him, of course, rushed him. You know, H now, Big H now, he had squabbles. You know what I'm saying? I've heard the dude, he had a nice little squabble game also. So he said when the white dude rushed him, beep, bop, beep, boop, bop, 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 they go to squab. And he say his Celly rushes the other white dude out there. His Celly rushes the white dude Celly. They over there squab. Ha, ha, beep, boop, bop, bop, bop. They squabbing, they doing their thing. H say he stepped back and beep, bop, boop, hit the white dude and knock him down, you know. So now he said by this time, the guard in the tower has realized that they're out there squabbing or whatever. So he's hollering, get down, get down. So H say he's still on his man. Beep, boop, bop, bop, bop. He say he hollering, get down, get down. And the guard shoots him with the block gun. Now the block gun is this gun that they have. They have a Mini 14 and they also have a block gun. A block gun is basically a gun that shoots wooden projectiles, and it almost looks like a tube. You know, it has like a tube type barrel on it, and it shoots these wooden blocks. And if you get hit with them, they're extremely hard. And if I can remember right, I think H had like a big knot or something on the side of his head, and that's where he had got shot with the block gun by the dude, so by the guard in the tower. So yeah, H was and I've heard, a lot of stories, some I can't share on here, man, but H was definitely with the business, well known, man. Actually, too, I also remember H breaking up my first potential, or preventing my first potential fight that I had in prison. So I believe it happened to be on a Friday, but it may have not been Friday. But on this particular day, they were serving fish, and I don't eat fish. So me and H, we didn't go to dinner. We made a spread in the cell, big old giant spread, chili beans, rice, summer sausages, that type of stuff. So later that night, they had day room. And so we go to day room, so we out there chilling. So my stomach get to bubbling or whatever. So I tell H, man, I gotta go to the bathroom, man. So he gets at the guard. He had a little juice up in there. He said, hold on, man. I'm gonna try to get the cell open. So he hollered at the guard, told him, his cell, he had to use the bathroom, popped this, could he pop the door? So I go up there, I go use the bathroom, right? So now as I'm coming back out, here comes this blood dude walking up to the door. Right now, just so happened, me and this blood dude happened to be on the bus together coming to Salinas Valley, right? I believe he may have been coming from Centinela. Now, the blood dude happened to be from San Diego. He appeared to be around my age, definitely was about my size, or maybe even a little smaller. He might have been 5'9", 5'10". He had done some time because I heard him talking on the bus. And before we get off the bus, or when we get close to the prison, somewhere around there, the guard was asking everybody, where are you from? Who do you run with? So he would know where to house people, right? So this blood happened to be from San Diego. Now, not only was he a blood, even though he appeared to be black, a brown-skinned black dude with, curly hair. When the guard asked him where he was from, he told the guard that he was a other, meaning that he ran with a other is basically somebody that's not from the three major groups in prison, racial groups, black, white, or Hispanic. So when you're a other, of course, you're either a Asian, Samoan, possibly an Indian sometimes, something like that, right? So he was saying that he ran with the others. But even though he told the police he ran with the others, once we got to prison, he was housed with black people. So anyway, he was housed with the Bloods. And so anyway, he comes to the cell asking me, why did I go in? And then I'm not supposed to go in when it's day room and this and that. Now, even though I hadn't been in prison long, I knew enough about the politics to know that this dude was a blood and he wasn't supposed to be telling me nothing. He said, yeah, man, you ain't supposed to be going in. It could be life or death or something along those terms. So when he said life or death, I like, man, who you think you talking to, man? He said, yeah, it could be life or death. So then, I tell him, I get a little irate with him and tell him, he better get on. You know what I'm saying? Basically, I told him in more colorful language than that. I told him, get on or whatever. So I told him if he don't, and he said something. I said, well, if you don't like it, come up in the cell and holler at me. What's cracking? Come up in here, So now by this time, Big H has noticed what's going on. So Big H come up there. Big H like, hey, what's going on? So I'm like, yeah, this dude talking crazy, man, and whoopty woo woo, And so I said whatever I said, and to Big H's credit, he resolved the situation, right? Because to keep it 100, you have a lot of dudes in prison, regardless of color, but you have a lot of black dudes too who like to see people fight for their own entertainment, right? Um, Big H being the dude he was, man, he wasn't one of those type of dudes, man. He resolved the situation. He said, "Hey, man, listen, y'all both brothers." He said whatever he said and said, "Hey, man, let's let this stuff go, right?" And so eventually, the dude that he was talking to, well, actually, he was talking to both of us. He was, like I said, he was also younger, around my age. He ended up, said okay, and he ended up going, he ended up leaving and going back downstairs. And like I said, once again, it definitely was none of his business because he was a blood. He programmed with the Bloods, and he even said he was a other. You know what I'm saying? So there was no need for him to come say anything to me, right? Later on, that dude ended up getting caught with a knife. He ended up getting caught with a knife, and that's the last time I ever saw that dude, right? But Big H was a real solid dude, man. And also, I remember another thing he done, man, how generous this dude was. Now, when I first got there, when me and Big H is in the cell, I'm first getting to prison. So I ordered a TV, but for whatever reason, when I got the TV, it was messed up, so I had to send it back. At that time, we would have to order TVs through certain vendors, so I had to send the TV back. So now there's only one TV in the cell, H's TV. Now, H had another homie in the building in a different section, though. He was from Compton or Watts, I can't remember which, and he was going home in about a week. At that time, due to so many people coming to prison with life sentences and having third strikes, I just assumed everybody up there had a gang at time. So he was the first dude, Big H's homie, that I met that was going home from a level 4. So anyway, he comes over there and he asks Big H, man, he said, I ain't got no TV, and I don't believe he had a Celly. He said, I'm bored, man, so can you believe Big H let this dude use his TV, the only TV that was in the cell? And Big H was one of those type of dudes. He was cool. He said, hey, chill, use my TV like it's yours. Just take care of it. You can watch what you want to watch, whatever. So Big H sent the only TV in the cell to somebody else to go watch. And keep in mind, this dude is going home in 4 or 5 days when me and Big H both got life, and we don't know if we ever going home, right? And so after a couple of days, man, I remember it was the NBA playoffs. Michael Jordan was playing. It was on a Saturday. I was A2B, which is a non-privileged status in prison. If you A1A, you get all your privileges. A2B basically means that you have either gotten some trouble or you don't have a job. And I didn't have a job, and so I only got one phone call a month, couldn't go outside on the weekends. H was getting ready to go to the yard. I said, H, man, we ain't got no TV up in there, man. Can I go get the TV? He said, yeah, man, go ahead and get it. He didn't have it enough. He didn't have it enough. And so I go over there, I get the TV, man. But that's the type of generous dude that Big H was, man. And so like I said, it wasn't actually until I left that prison and went to other prisons throughout my prison journey when I would hear all types of dudes talk about Big H. Not only Crips from Compton and Watts, but Crips from everywhere. They had a lot of love for Big H, And so eventually I was sad to hear after I left, maybe a couple years, Big H ended up having a heart attack and he passed away in Salinas, man. So shout out to Big H, Another dude who I like to mention, who I ran across too, man, who had the same pretty much demeanor as Big H, and he happened to be from Compton as well. Matter of fact, he said that he grew up with Big H. They was running buddies, was Big Marcellus. I ran across Big Marcellus at a prison known as CMC East. At the time I ran across Big Marcellus, excuse me, it was, I would say, maybe 2016, we happened to be in the same self-help groups. And so we started talking, by that time, he was a little older. He had been down a while, probably somewhere, because I believe he ended up doing 30s plus years. So Big Marcellus had been down a while. But just like Big H, you have some dudes who do a lot of time in prison, and it seems like they can't wait to get on do a certain amount of time so they can just be the big homie and walk around and like they the big homie. Big H or Big Marcellus was never like that, man. They were just regular dudes. Me and Marcellus would chop it up. We talk. Matter of fact, I just talked to him maybe about an hour before I did this video. And real cool dude, man. You would never have any indication these dudes were the legendary figures that I found them out to be later on, especially once I was finally able to parole and I started watching some of these YouTube interviews, man, where their names are mentioned and spoken of highly. They are well known, well-respected soldiers, well-respected legendary Crips, man. And so, like I said, by me being so far away from Los Angeles, especially back in those times where, information would spread and be filtered throughout the city in certain areas, but you wouldn't necessarily have the news of a dude's reputation travel, miles and miles and miles, to a whole nother city that's an hour and something, some change away. So like I said, I had no idea how popular both of these dudes was, man. So once again, man, rest in peace to Big H. Shout out to Marcellus. One of these days, man, hopefully soon I'll be able to get Marcellus on my page, interview him a little bit. But anyway, that's just a story right there about Big H, legendary Crip from the Grandies, what I believe now they may call Nutty Block. I may not necessarily be 100% correct about that, but I believe I am. But anyway, shout out to Marcellus as well. You already know what it is, man. It's your boy 16 of Life. Resume normal program.